With me, I have the entire X-Rite i1Display family. This includes their two latest release, the X-Rite i1Display Pro Plus and the X-Rite i1Display Studio. And I am super excited to test them and review them in this video. So starting off, what I'm going to do is talk about these three devices and how they are different, how they may fit into your workflow. Secondly, because these three devices uses two different sets of software, I am going to do a live calibration between the two software sets to show you the different interfaces. And then lastly, I already have spent 8 hours calibrating 3 different displays using these devices at different settings to compare the output, the ICC profile, and the color space that they can produce. These 3 displays include 2 different generation MacBook Pro and an 8-year-old Dell display. I'm Artsuwansang, X-Rite Colorimeter, and before we get started, please like and subscribe. To start with, these devices are the same in the sense that they're all colorimeter. They will do calibration on displays and projectors. The form factor of these 3 are the same. In fact, the underpinning technology of these 3 are very similar to each other. And the nice part about them is that when you have them lined up side by side like this, you can tell which one exactly you have by looking on the markers or the icons or the logos on the side of the device. So now let's kind of talk about these a little bit more. First of all, I like to focus on the i1Display Studio. The i1Display Studio uses the i1 Studio software to do calibration. It's an advanced calibration software made easy. So essentially, X-Rite have gone in and simplify a lot of the granular controls in the software to make screen and projector calibration as simple as possible. And if you want something that's very simple to calibrate, this is the device to consider. Now these two devices, this is the X-Rite i1Display Pro. This is the device that for the longest time I regarded as the best display calibrator out there. And this is the upgrade to it that X-Rite just launched, the i1Display Pro Plus. Now these two devices uses X-Rite full-fledged feature software called i1 Profiler. i1 Profiler gives you so many controls over the ICC profile that you are going to be creating, which is really awesome for professionals. Now that said, another thing to consider about these two devices is that at the fastest, these two devices can calibrate up to 5 times faster than the i1Display Studio, and they're also compatible with third-party software. In this case, what I mean is that, for instance, if you go out and purchase a BenQ hardware calibrated display, the software that you should use to calibrate the BenQ display is BenQ Palette Master Element software. These two devices are going to be compatible with that software. Whereas if you have purchased the i1Display Studio, this device is not compatible with third-party software, so that is something to keep in mind. Let's start with these two first, the i1Display Studio versus the i1Display Pro. Given the same setting in terms of the calibration settings, these two devices are capable of producing profiles that are head-to-head with each other, meaning that they're both equally good. They're both going to produce really great profiles. The difference is that the i1Display Pro, because it uses the advanced, the more professional software, the i1 Profiler, is going to give you more control. For instance, it will allow you to do profile validation and also uniformity tests, whereas the i1 Studio, you can't really do that. Now, because these two uses the same software, they can also do the same thing. So what makes these two different? Well, this is recently launched, the X-Rite i1Display Pro Plus. What makes this calibrator or this colorimeter great is because it can calibrate displays that are as bright as 2000 nits. What that means is that this colorimeter is going to be much more sensitive to different color ranges, different brightness ranges. This device should be one of the best colorimeters out there to calibrate any displays. Now, this is going to be really useful if you are a videographer who actually edits and view HDR footage on reference display, because it's really designed for that. Now, one of the displays that's going to come out on the market soon that comes to mind is the Apple Pro Display XDR. This is going to be the perfect device to calibrate that. So if you're a photographer and you do any kind of printing, these two devices will work for you. The difference why you would consider to get this i1Display Pro Plus is that at any point in the future, if you plan to edit on a brighter display, or if you just want more sensitivity in terms of measurement, then this is the device to consider. It is future-proof in that regard. If you just want to calibrate for prints right now or calibrate for photo editing, the i1Display Pro will do just fine. And just to give you a quick reference, majority of the display that we are using on our laptops or any Apple built-in display can go up to between 400 to 500 nits right now. When we calibrate our display as photographers for print, we generally bring that down to about 100 nits. So if you're just doing it for print, any of these two devices we do, if you want future-proof, then the i1Display Pro Plus is going to be a device that you want to consider. Now, the best way to do a comparison between these is that let's do the live calibration so that we can see the software feature set of these two groups compared side by side. In this portion of the review, what I'm going to do is run i1 Studio software with i1Display Pro and the i1 Profiler software with the i1Display Pro Plus to kind of show you the difference between these two software. So first of all, let's start out with the i1 Studio and the i1Display Studio. Now, if you happen to have a Color Monkey display, this will also work with the i1 Studio software, or if you have the Color Monkey Photo, this will also work with the i1 Studio software too. Something to note too is that the i1 Studio and the i1 Profiler are all the same code-based software, which makes it easy for X-Rite to upgrade the software every time Apple release an update to Mac OS X or Windows release an update to Windows in that case. But all right, let's start out with the i1 Studio. So first of all, what we're going to do is click on i1Display Studio Solutions, and as we can kind of see here, we're now a lot more limited on the options we can choose. So we're going to choose display here in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and jump back into full screen mode here. And the moment that we choose display, we're faced with a dialog very similar to what you will see in a moment with the i1Display Pro. However, we have the color LCD here. We can still choose the backlit technology, which is great. You can use the preset for photo. You can choose different preset for videos, but in this case, I'm going to go custom. So I want my luminance point to be, the white point to be at D65 or 6500 Kelvin. I'm going to set the luminance of this display to 80 candela. For tone response curve, we're going to go ahead and choose 2.2, which is the standard tones response curve here. And then next, what we're going to do in the workflow is click on measurement. So now what I would simply do is click on start measurement process, take the i1Display Pro, flip the cap around, hang it on the display, make sure it's totally flush and flat, and start the calibration process. So first of all, what it's going to do is ask me to set the proper luminance on the laptop display. I already have this dial in, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it. In this case, the closest luminance I can achieve to 80 is 93. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next here. Now this, once I click on next, it's going to do the display calibration here, and it's going to do it at the 118 patches. This is equivalent to the i1 Profiler small patches. So we're going to have this run. I'm going to go ahead and jump into i1 Profiler now. So with the i1 Profiler, I have a couple of options. I have the basic option here that I can use, which will give me very simple display, profiling, projector, printer calibration. For instance, I can go to profile here, and it doesn't give me a lot of options. The interface here, for the most part, is very similar to the i1 Studio. Now, what I can do though, is let's go back home here for a second. What I can do here is instead of just using the basic mode, I can go into advanced. And now with the advanced mode, the interface greatly changes, and I can also do a lot more things. For example, I can do a quality check on my profile. I can do a uniformity check on my display, but primarily we're just going to focus on profiling here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on profiling. Now, when you come in here in the advanced mode, you can still choose the display backlit technology. If you have multiple displays, it will show up right there where my cursor is right now. You can set the white point, the luminance for the display, set the gamma curve. But what makes this really different is this box right here, the contrast ratio. So we can select contrast ratio for native, which is really great for display calibration in general. However, if you're doing printing, if you want to match the contrast ratio of the display to, for example, a fine art print, which could be, for example, 1:30, in this case, you can load the fine art profile in here and have it profile so that you can do soft proofing on the screen. It is a very powerful feature that i1 Profiler comes with, and this is something that you cannot do with the i1Display Studio or the i1 Studio software. All right, moving on here. We're going to go ahead and keep this at native. I'll leave all the other setting off. This is also another screen where you can select a profile version right away. You can choose the chromatic adaptation it wants to use and also the profile type. Again, these are the settings that are not available to you if you use the basic mode, but this is something that you can come in and control. And what I like the most is right here under patch sets. So right here, what's really great is that under normal circumstances, or if you choose the basic mode, it will only profile the display using the small patch sets of 118 patches. Most of the time, I like to profile my display using the large patch set of 461. This way, it will produce a more accurate result because it's sampling more colors. But in this case, just for this demo and the purpose for this demo and the speed in general, I'm going to go ahead and choose small so that we're only doing 118 here. We're going to go ahead and click on measure, and this is going to do the exact same thing similar to the i1 Studio. Click on start measurement here. Bring the i1Display Pro Plus around. Adjust the weight, hang it on the display. Go ahead and click on next, and it's also now going to ask me to set the proper luminance or brightness on this laptop. Because I already have this pre-dial in, the closest I can get to 80 candela in this case is 98, so I'm going to go ahead and go with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next here. Now it's going to start the measurement process. Now these two are going to measure at about the same in terms of the number of patches here. This one will finish first, and then we'll jump back into the i1 Studio software to show you how we save the profile out. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next here when it's done. I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and we'll set this on the table here like so. And now what I can do here is go click on the ICC profile. It's going to ask me to name the ICC profile. In this case, I'm going to leave it at default. This is where you would come in and choose the ICC profile version. In this case, because I'm running on a Macintosh, I'm going to leave it at version 4. Also, because we're doing a demo, I am going to disable the profile reminder. So we'll go ahead and click on none. And I'm going to go ahead and click on save profile. And just like that, you are done. You now have a custom profile for your display if you're using the i1 Studio. That's pretty much it. There's nothing else that you can do here in terms of profile verification, and you can't really run a test on that. This is something that I'm going to show you with the i1 Profiler, that you can go ahead and run a ICC profile verification on there. So now that the i1 Profiler is done with the color measurement part, we're going to go ahead and take off the i1Display Pro Plus here. I'm going to go ahead and put them on the table. And let's go ahead and finish our profiling. So we're going to go ahead and click on ICC Profile here. Again, this is the place where I would come in and name the ICC profile. I can do the reminder here, so I can do constant ambient light monitoring, to which I'm not going to do any of those right now. I'm going to go ahead and click on Save Profile here. So the nice thing about this software and this full feature set software is that from this point on, I can do a display QA. So if I go and click on display QA here, I can measure X-Rite Color Checker Classic patches and see how they are. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and click on the measurement workflow and click on start measurement here. So this is one of the advanced features of the i1 Profiler that you can do, is that you can do a validation on your ICC profile that was generated with this program. The other thing to note too is that you can come in and also do a display uniformity check with the i1 Profiler too. So these are the primary differences between these two software. The i1 Studio, an advanced color calibration software made easy, and the i1 Profiler, that if you choose to, you can go into an advanced mode and choose a lot of granular controls over your profiling. Okay, so once it's done with the validation, we'll take the i1Display Pro off again. We'll go into QA report. And the nice part about this is that it will give me a delta E value for my screen. It will give me the average delta E value for all the patches and the highest delta E value. This is really great information for me because I can actually use this to determine if my profile that I've just generated is good. That's number one. Secondly, I can always save this as a report onto the desktop. This way, if I want to ever reference this later on, I can do that. And thirdly, what I can also do here is click and add to trending. So the nice thing about adding your profile or the delta E value, the trending is that over time, you can see if your display is actually getting better with every calibration or getting worse. Overall, what that will tell you is that if your display is deteriorating in terms of quality, meaning that if the backlight is starting to go out, then obviously it's going to start to trend upward where the delta E is getting higher. This is something great about the software that you can do. So this is the conclusion and analysis part of the video. As I mentioned, I spent 8 hours calibrating 3 different displays. The first one we're going to focus on is a 2015 MacBook Pro. This is a 15-inch model, and I have calibrated this with all of these 3 devices. So for the i1Display Pro and the i1Display Pro Plus, I have used the large color patch for this. And for the i1Display Studio, I'm stuck with using the smaller 118 color patch. But let's see how that does. So I'm going to go ahead and call up the i1Display profile first. This is the i1Display profile that's created. It looks really nice. It's smooth on majority of the parts of the display, but on the sides. There's no dimples, no holes or anything like that. So this is a pretty decent profile. So now what I'm going to go do is hold this for comparison, and let's pull up the i1Display Studio in. So this is comparison to the i1Display Studio software. The outline that you see there on the outside and so forth, that is the i1Display Pro profile. So as we can kind of see here, the i1Display Studio can produce a profile that comes really close to the i1Display Pro. However, in some areas, for example, the deep blues and purples, the i1Display Pro can do a little bit better job with it. Now this said, because the gap is so small, you're not really missing out on a lot. Now let's go ahead and pull in the i1Display Pro Plus, our latest colorimeter device that has more sensitivity in. Let's see what happens. Compared to the i1Display Pro, it can show a little bit more of the blues. It does pull in some a little bit more of like the darker green tones and red. Otherwise, it comes fairly close to each other in this case. There's a little gap on the green, but it's not big. So if I have to conclude this, I would say that the i1Display Pro and the i1Display Pro Plus shows just about the same in terms of color, can calibrate the laptop in about the same way here. So let me pull up the display verification. Because I am using the i1 Profiler software, I can do the ICC Profile verification. And now let's look at the two. The i1Display Pro profile is measuring the average delta E at 1, while the i1Display Pro is measuring the delta E at 0.59. In this case, this is almost half. And if you take a look at majority of all the other numbers, the i1Display Pro produces a lower number in terms of delta E. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few more variables here. Let's look at some of the colors. For example, let's take a look at red, number 10 here. In this case, the i1Display Pro is able to produce the delta E value for that one at 0.80. Red number 10 with the i1Display Pro Plus is 0.35. So when we first look at the color wedge, we may have not noticed a difference between the two devices that much in terms of the profile, the color space, the ICC color space that it had created, the 3D model of it. But when we start to look at the report, the raw data that is measuring, the i1Display Pro Plus, the new device, is able to measure the colors more accurately because the delta E value is much lower. That's pretty interesting. So now let's go ahead and close this out. Let's move on to my other laptop here. Now let's have a look at the 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro. Again, I've actually done the calibration with all these 3 devices on here. So we'll first look at the color sync utility and see how the 3D geometric shape look. So what I'm going to do first is let's go ahead and call up i1Display Pro. And we'll use that as a basis for comparison here. This is a color wedge. It looks really smooth, really nice still. I'm going to go ahead and click on hold that for comparison. And let's go ahead and pull the i1Display Studio in. So once I pull the i1Display Studio in this case, if we start to look around, we can see that it shows a little bit more of the red. It does show a little bit of the blue, more of the blue and green side. However, if we start to look at the wedge here, there is still some gap between the two, and this gap is really small. Now, we have to consider too that the i1Display Studio was only using 118 patches versus my i1Display Pro, it was measuring 461 patches, so there is a patch difference between the two. So that being said, let's go ahead and pull up the i1Display Pro Plus. So the i1Display Pro Plus shows very similar in terms of the blue and green. The color space almost overlap each other perfectly here. There's just minor gaps here and there, but it's not big at all. So all of these three devices can calibrate laptop screens, or at least built-in LCD on laptops, just about the same. There's not a big difference between all three of them here. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the raw data and see if we can come up with anything different. So now I have the raw data with me again. This is the i1 Profiler. This is comparing the i1Display Pro with the i1Display Pro Plus. Again, if we look at the delta E value, the i1Display Pro software has a delta E value on this screen, an average delta E of 0.54. The i1Display Pro Plus was able to measure it and get a delta E value of 0.36. So generally the lower the number is better in this case. Now if we also look at the raw data here, they're going to come really close to each other. But let's go ahead and spot pick a number here. Again, I'm going to go ahead and pick value in row number 10 here. This is kind of like the off-red color. So in row number 10, the i1Display Pro was able to achieve 0.54 for delta E value, which is really good. But for the i1Display Pro Plus, this is able to achieve 0.15. So that is significantly lower. So what this raw data tells us is that the i1Display Pro Plus is a much more sensitive color measuring device. That means that it can get even more accurate colors than the i1Display Pro. So i1Display Pro, already a great device. i1Display Pro Plus seems to be like a much better device in this case. Now, if you already have the i1Display Pro, that is still a really great device, and I may not consider upgrading to the i1Display Pro Plus right away unless you're going to be editing or calibrating on a reference display that are really bright. However, otherwise, comparing the two, they're really close to each other value-wise. The next test that I'm going to do is going to be the really big determination of how these devices perform with an older LCD that is not hardware calibration capable. So the last device that I've done testing on is the Dell U2711. This is a 27-inch Dell. It's around 8 to 9 years old right now, so it's a really old panel. And this device, or this display, is not capable of hardware calibration, unlike all the other BenQs I review. But this is a good place to test out the software. So what I've actually done here is did a profile with with all these three devices. So let's go ahead and pull up the i1Display Pro up here. So this is the color wedge from the i1Display Pro, the ICC Profile that I have created. This is the three-dimensional shape of it. Everything looks pretty good. Again, it doesn't look like there's any defect in the profile. Let's go ahead and hold that for comparison here, and let's go ahead and first pull in the i1Display Studio profile in. So the moment we pull the i1Display Studio profile in, that we can see immediately that we'll see a little bit more of like the deep reds, a little bit more of the green on one side of it, and a touch more of the blue. However, on the purple side, the i1Display Studio is not quite as good as the i1Display Pro here, because we can start to see that there is a gap, and we can see the outline of the gap there. We can see the outline of the gap from this angle. Again, I wouldn't consider this like a big deal. It's not a deal breaker. Again, it's going to depend on what you need from your devices, but this is just to kind of show you the difference between the three, or the two of them right now. And so now we have the i1Display Pro. Hold for comparison. I'm going to go ahead and pull the result in from the i1Display Pro Plus in. So if I pull in the i1Display Pro Plus in, we're going to start to see a couple of things changes right away. Is that we see a lot more of the magenta, a lot more of the red tones here. In the outline of the graph, we see a little bit more of the greens and a little bit of blue, but otherwise, the color wedge itself looks about the same. It looks like it's mimicking it. It's not as deep in the purple side, but otherwise it looks really good. So as we can kind of see here, these two looks just about the same. So it is not really quite as big of a difference for this display. But let's go ahead and take a look at the raw data here. The data is flipped around a little bit in this case, where the i1Display Pro is showing a better calibration value than the i1Display Pro Plus on this old display. So that's something interesting that's going on. Now the thing is that we're talking about a difference between 0.34 to 0.56 in terms of delta E value, and that's like a really small, minute difference. Those are differences that it's really hard to be discernible with the human eye. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind there. So I hope that you find this review useful in guiding your decision to choosing the right colorimeter for your workflow. In the future, I'll be doing more videos with the i1Display Pro Plus, calibrating really bright reference display and also projectors. I'm Artster1 saying, and until next time, art is right. Yay! Yeah, but I don't want to be human. I want to be a robot.
I am art.
The ICC profile that it can't produce any outcome. So lastly, so good.
Just go from, dang it, art. It was so good.
Control over the profiles that they are about to create.
Keep going.
I forgot what else I'm going to say. Starting out, this is... Good. We're going to talk about the i1Display Pro, the wrong device. The physical part of the device, the actual display calibration, period. I don't need to say that.
Thanks.
Period. And then it can also do display density. Display density, no. And it can also do, oh. And it can also do display uniformity. What else am I going to say? I hope that you see the difference between the software set between the two, and whichever one you choose will be up to you.
I loved that. This is really up to you. Good luck.
I'm Art Suwansang. Okay.
At least you remember who you are.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
Perfect.